Hi, it's Chris, and back with another video. This is the fourth and final instalment in my series on the new wave of British heavy metal. A period of my life, actually, which I look back at really, really fondly. So around about 1979 through to about 1982. I was just finishing school then, doing my O-levels, my A-levels, just before I went off to university. So a really good part of my life. And the music, whilst it's not always brilliant, is certainly has that kind of level of nostalgia that I often look for in the music I listen to. So at the end of last video, we got to the end of 1980. Now, I did actually miss one album out because I thought it came out at the beginning of 1981, but actually it came out right at the end of 1980. So I'm going to start right at the end of that year with the debut album from Angel Witch. So a lot of people see this as the definitive new wave of British heavy metal album. It's got the tight face and the kind of gloomy cover and the logo. You know, Angel Witch were a three-piece. This is their debut. They did, I think, one more album possibly. But this is really, really good. It's kind of very Black Sabbath influenced. In fact, I saw them with Black Sabbath on their Heaven and Hell tour. They opened for them. But a really good album, and certainly one of the definitive statements of this particular movement, I think. So that's Angel Witch, debut on Bronze Records. I lived down in Poole. I don't now, but I did back at this time. And one of the bands that used to play a lot in the area was a band called Raw Deal. Now there's quite a few Raw Deals around. This is the Bournemouth and Poole version of them. There they are. I used to go and see this lot quite regularly actually, and they produced, I think, just one single, which I remember picking this up at a gig a very long time ago. So Raw Deal from the Poole area. Tigers of Pang Tang brought out a new single. This is Hellbound. It comes with a free single as well. This had a new singer, so they had got rid of Jess Cox and replaced him with a guy called John Deverell, and he is a whole lot better when it comes to singing. So a little bit more about that band in a moment. The debut album from Raven, and I think I said this before when I showed a single from them in a previous video. This band, had they been managed really well, could have been at the forefront of thrash metal actually. I'm not a great fan, if I'm honest, because I'm not a great fan of thrash metal, but you know, quite high speed, quite raucous kind of stuff. Production isn't brilliant, but it's very, very new wave of British heavy metal with the logo and the cover and the look of the band. So I think they're still touring and still playing actually. Beginning of 81, I saw Diamond Head. They were one of my favourite bands in that era. I saw them 4 or 5 times. There's a programme from the tour. I also picked up a white covered promo of a 4-track EP that they had, which came out later on in the year, but I remember picking this up at the concert. They played, it was at Portsmouth Guildhall, I think it's called, and I managed to get on the guest list. Met the band previous to that anyway, and Silverwing was supporting, but Diamond Head, just magnificent. This is Praying Mantis and Cheated. This is the first single they did for Arista Records. This has got a couple of live tracks with it as well, Flirting with Suicide and Panic in the Streets. Really, really good songs. Great band live actually, and for me a really important part of this movement. Then we've got the debut album from More. This is called Warhead. They did another album, Blood and Thunder, which I don't have, which is, I think, better. It's got a different vocalist. This is okay. It's got 1 or 2 decent moments. The vocalist on here is a guy called Paul Mario Day. He was the original vocalist in Iron Maiden in sort of mid-70s. And this is okay. It's reasonably forgettable, but quite interesting. What was better, actually, was the We Are the Band single that came from them, and Atomic Rock, which is not on the album actually, which is a decent song. So there we are on Atlantic Records, and that's More. A band called A to Z, who I have seen. I can't think who they supported actually, but this is No Fun After Midnight, 12-inch single, Treason and Valhalla Force, very new wave of British heavy metal, isn't it? Those titles. Comes on red vinyl. Not a bad band. Not as, you know, again, typical tight face, flying V, all of that kind of imagery. Not as heavy as probably it sounds, but not bad. I remember going to a gig in 1981, I think it was 1981, and the support act for this gig, it was Iron Maiden who were playing, but the support band were a French band called Trust. And this album came out actually in 1980, but I saw them in 1981. They supported Iron Maiden on the Killers tour, and they opened for them, and they were absolutely sensational. They had as their drummer at the time, although he's not on this particular album, Nico McBrain, who went on to play for, and still does, play for Iron Maiden. But this is the English version of their album Repression. And so English lyrics, English spoken, whereas obviously they're usually a French-speaking band. The lyrics on here were done by Jimmy Percy of Sham 69 fame, but a really good album, great production, and some really, really good heavy metal songs on here. They were a great band live as well, really good. As I said, they were supporting Iron Maiden because they just brought out their Killers album, their second album. This is right up there, I think, in terms of the best new wave of British heavy metal albums. I'm sure many of you, if you have watched all of the other ones, are familiar with this anyway. Really good album. There's a single in there as well, which is Sanctuary, backed with Drifter. And I've got The Fire, which is a Montrose song. They were recorded live at the Marquee, I think. But this, quintessential again, quintessential Iron Maiden and new wave of British heavy metal. Got that logo, got the Eddie character. You know what you're getting when you get this album. It's 100% heavy metal. You can see that. Titles like The Ides of March, Rothschild, Murder in the Rue Morgue, Genghis Khan, Killers, Prodigal Son, Purgatory, Drifter. You know what you're getting when you get an Iron Maiden album. What's really interesting about this band is they've pretty much kept this sound. This was the last recorded stuff with Paul Di'Anno, studio stuff. He was a singer that gave them almost a punk attitude, although they weren't, I don't think, influenced by punk, but because he had shorter hair and he had quite a gruff voice. I really like the first two albums by Iron Maiden. I prefer them to the Bruce Dickinson era, actually. And I don't know if this is as good as the first one. It's certainly better produced. I think it was produced by Martin Birch of kind of Deep Purple and Rainbow fame. A couple of other things. So the Handsome Beasts, they brought out a single in an attempt to try and make it look like a Japanese import. This is called Breaker, which is pretty average, but anyway. Vardis did a cover of Silver Machine, and Motorhead and Girls' School came together for the St. Valentine's Day Massacre EP. It's got Please Don't Touch, back with Emergency and Bomber, so collaborations of Girls' School song and a Motorhead song. Not bad EP, actually. Mentioned Praying Mantis earlier. They brought out their album in 81. This is Time Tells No Lies with is it Rodney Matthews? I think it is Rodney Matthews cover. Lovely cover, really like that. Good band. They do have a copy of All Day and All of the Night, which I'm not keen of. I wish that was at the end and then you could just lift up the needle. But Lovers to the Grave, good song. Panic in the Streets, Flirting with Suicide is fantastic. Really good album, actually. Quite melodic, good players, really good live band. A little bit maybe more melodic, less metally than the rest of the genre or the movement, but certainly worth having in your collection if you like this era of music. Waited Too Long, Diamond Head, they brought out another single backed with Play It Loud, and it was produced by Tony Wilson, who produced all the Friday Rock Show sessions, actually. So great band, nice little single. Gillan was still going. This was I think the last album to feature this lineup, possibly, with Bernie Tormé. Future Shock, so Bite the Bullet is very new wave of British heavy metal, really upbeat sort of stuff. They did also a cover of New Orleans, and they played that live on Top of the Pops. And I don't know if it was live, but they were on Top of the Pops. I think Bernie Tormé had left at that point, actually, so he doesn't feature in that clip. But there we are. There's Future Shock from I think it's 81. Saw them on that tour. This is their European tour from 1981, and they were supported by a band called Dead Ringer on that tour. Another kind of part of the new wave of British heavy metal. This is their double single that came out in 81 called Maxine. There's the track list in there. Not bad. I can't remember what they were like when I saw them live. Nuts, who featured on the Metal for Mothers CD album. They were a band that had been around for quite a long time. They kind of reinvented themselves and renamed themselves as Rage. So this is their single Out of Control, which is better than their Nuts days, actually. Not bad. Tigers of Pang Tang, they brought out their second album, and with a change of vocalist, this time with John Deverell on vocals, adding a much better sound. Again, a lot of people say this is the best Tigers album. Possibly, I think I love the first one. Maybe it's a nostalgic thing with the first one, but this is really good. Takes the band to a different level. Also features John Sykes, who went on to play in Thin Lizzy, not long after this actually, and then on to play in Whitesnake famously. Really good, really good guitarist. So not bad. Produced by Chris Sangarides, who I think died recently. He also did some production for Thin Lizzy and Girl. Samson brought out an album. I don't have the album. I can't remember what it's called actually. I think it's Shock Tactics actually. This is a picture disc that has Riding with the Angels as the song. So Samson, that was the last album that featured Bruce Dickinson before he moved on to play with Iron Maiden, sing with Iron Maiden. We've got Saxon. This is And the Band's Played On with Heavy Metal Thunder and Hungry Years on the B-side. We have the second album from Girls' School in 1981, Come On Let's Go, their version of Tush, Yeah Right, some really good songs. Comes on red vinyl, it's on Bronze Records, same label as Motorhead. Toured with them extensively. Tigers of Pang Tang brought out another single, Don't Stop By. It's back with a live track, Slave to Freedom, which is on the debut album, and a really good live version of it is as well, so that was nice. And in June 81, we had the first edition of Kerrang! Magazine. So this came out with Sounds, the newspaper, and then went on to be a really best-selling magazine, actually. So I've got the first 50. I kept them back in the day. This has got a lot of the kind of old stuff in it, but it's also got a lot of, UFO and Thin Lizzy and all that kind of thing. But it also does have quite a lot of input with some of the new wave of British heavy metal bands, obviously the Girls' School album, but also Bitches Sin, Split Beaver, there's a name, Chainsaw, Tora. So really good magazines. So I've got the first 50 of those, and they were always big, big with the new wave of British heavy metal. Come On Let's Go, back with Tonight and Demolition, which both recorded live. Girls' School quite often would have B-sides that either weren't on the album or were live versions of previous songs, so that's quite nice. Motorhead brought out their live album. There was quite a lot of single live albums around about the 1980-81 rather than double live. This should have been a double, but this is a really good album. If you like heavy metal, then that's probably in your collection, isn't it? Def Leppard brought out Let It Go, backed with an instrumental called Switch 625, which is really good. Both were taken from the album High and Dry. I saw them on this tour. They were very good. Really good band. They, the typeface, the kind of sound, very new wave of British heavy metal, although they always said they weren't part of it, but they really were. And I think their second album is probably my favourite of theirs, actually. This is High and Dry, produced by Mutt Lange. Let It Go, another hit and run, Lady Strange, Bringing on the Heartache, which I'll mention again in a moment, with the Hypnosis cover. So a little bit of money spent on this. Really good sound, really good production. Not quite as good, I don't think, in terms of the sound, maybe as the first one. It's still my favourite. I showed a white labelled promo of a Diamond Head EP a moment ago. Well, it came out officially as Diamond Lights. And then you've got Diamond Lights, We Won't Be Back, I Don't Got, and It's Electric, which was actually on the White album as well. But a great band. Good EP. Gillan continued to tour, as he still does with Deep Purple, and I saw him on that tour. This was a slightly different lineup because I got a new guitarist, Yannick Gers, who was in White Spirit, then became became a new member of the band. They toured with Nightwing. They were part of the new wave of British heavy metal, but they're not heavy metal. They're much more proggy, actually. So an interesting band. I don't possess anything by them on vinyl, actually, but Gillan were always a really good band live. The last stuff that came out from Maiden that included Paul Di'Anno was this. This is the, I think this is maybe a German version of it. The US one is better because you get an extra track. I think Rothschild is on it if you get the US version, but the version of Killers on here is fantastic. So a really good EP. Maiden Japan, there's a nice play on a name. And then another compilation came out. This time it's the Friday Rock Show. So it's got Spider, Diamond Head, Sweet Savage, who were from Northern Ireland, featured Vinnie Campbell, who went on to play with Dio and now is in Def Leppard. Last Flight, Demon, Black Axe, who became, I think Black Axe became Wolf in the sort of mid-80s actually. Who else is on here? Witchfind, who I did see. Support, Def Leppard, and Zero, Cutting Loose. So really, again, a nice combination of stuff that you don't usually find. Eye of the Storm, Sweet Savage being probably the best on here actually. There was another compilation which I don't have. It came out on Neat Records, and I think it only came out on a cassette actually, although I think there's an Italian import of it on vinyl, and it's called Lead Weight, which is something I really would like to try and get my hands on actually, because there's some really good stuff on it. But anyway, Friday Rock Show, really real champions of this particular era. One of the singles that came from High and Dry from Def Leppard was Bringing on the Heartache, and this really did signal the direction they were going, moving from a much more hard rock sound to almost a pop metal sound, pop rock kind of sound. So good single actually, really good single, but certainly a departure from the sound that they started with. And then we're in 82. And we've got the first single that features from Iron Maiden that features Bruce Dickinson, and this is Run to the Hills. Very, very Maiden. There he is in the middle. Very, very Maiden. It's got Clive Burr, the drummer on it, who sadly passed away quite a few years ago, who was great, replaced by Nico McBrain. But this has that galloping kind of, sound and that kind of loose bass sound that Steve Harris also always brought to the band. Produced by Martin Birch, as he produced quite a lot of stuff by them. Great single, Run to the Hills. Run to the Hills came from the first album to feature Bruce Dickinson, so The Number of the Beast. A lot of people will say this is the best Iron Maiden album. I don't think it is, but Hallowed Be Thy Name is certainly one of my favourite songs by them. There's the track listing. I think the first sort of 4 or so Maiden albums were never bettered by them. But one of the beauties of this band, they haven't really changed their sound or their look. There's always that kind of very, very clever marketing. Same logo, same look, same kind of music. You know what you're getting when you buy an Iron Maiden album. Other bands from 82, obscure one, Panzer Division, but really good single actually. That, what's it called? Will Rock the World, Standing on the Outside. So 2 really good tracks from Panzer Division. Demon bought out a single. This is signed actually. I've never seen them. I just bought it up in a shop at some point. Have We Been Here Before? Demon, with a kind of demonic cover. Their albums always looked demonic. They really weren't. They were actually quite soft rock actually in the end. So there's a single from Demon. Saxon bought out a live album in 82. Called The Eagle Has Landed. Again, single rather than a double. This is like greatest hits live. Really good production, great songs. Machine Gun is fantastic. The opener, Motorcycle Man, brilliant. 20,000 Feet. It's got all their hits as well. Strong Arm of the Law, Never Surrender, Wheels of Steel, 747. Good album, good live album. Should have been a double. Guess what? I saw Gillan again. This was on their Magic tour, and they were supported by, again, one of the new wave of British heavy metal bands. They were called Spider. Spider brought out an album called Rock and Roll Gypsies, which is like Status Quo with a pub rock singer. It's okay. I wouldn't want to listen to too much of it. They were quite good fun live, actually. A good kind of warm-up act, but not a headlining act, but interesting nonetheless. And then we've got, with a beautiful Rodney Matthews cover, Diamond Head. This is their first album on MCA. They eventually got a record deal. Brought out this, Living on Borrowed Time. Good album. The production is a bit sanitised. Starting to look a little bit 80s on there. But a beautiful cover. A couple of quite a lot of new songs. This track Borrowed Time which they also did on the Friday Night Rock Show, is just brilliant. Am I Evil and Light Into Nations are on here, and they're re-recorded and with a different production, a bit too sanitized. Some of the later reissues of Light Into the Nations are stellar in terms of their production, much better. Diamond Head toured with Silverwing, so here's a 12-inch from Silverwing, Sitting Pretty. They always wanted to be Kiss, this band, but really weren't. And I remember a song from quite a long time ago called Rock and Roll Mayhem. You know, not really mayhem. Iron Maiden did a double live album. Of course they did, Live After Death. It's like a greatest hits live, really good production. Again, Martin Birch, who engineered Made in Japan, so he can do no wrong as far as I see it, because that was just an incredible live album. The sound on this is good, the track listing is great. What a fantastic live band Maiden are, still going, as I said. And then we're into sort of 83 territory here, and Def Leppard are certainly changing their sound, and they brought out Photograph. This is has some kind of pop-up affair going on here. This was the single that came from Pyromania, hugely successful, and very much a prelude to the next album after that, which was Hysteria, which really broke them big. But this was a big seller, as was the album, and as was the subsequent album, Hysteria, of course. In 83, Thin Lizzy was still going, but this is their last studio album, produced by Chris Tsangarides, I think I said his name right. This is Thunder and Lightning. This features John Sykes, who was obviously goes on to Whitesnake, was in the Tigers of Pangtang. A lot of people really like this album. It's just not Thin Lizzy. It's too heavy metal. So Cold Sweat just does not sound like Thin Lizzy. But The Sun Goes Down is a wonderful tune. Really is fantastic. This is the one with a live, couple of live tracks on a separate bit of vinyl. Emerald, Killer on the Loose, Hollywood, and The Boys Are Back in Town. I saw them on this tour actually. They were sensational, but a little bit more metal than they've ever been before. Cold Sweat was the single that came out initially. That came out with a free live single which featured Angel of Death, which is also wonderful stuff. Iron Maiden continued their sound. This is 83 also, so Peace of Mind. This has got Where Eagles Dare, Flight of Icarus, The Trooper. So standard Iron Maiden fare. I think this is a great album. Probably their first 5 were their best, I think, but again, Eddie, the logo, everything looking as it should be on an Iron Maiden album. And then just finishing up, because for me, round about this time is where I kind of lost interest. And it was round about this time, Donington 83, Whitesnake were the headline act on this. Meatloaf was playing, ZZ Top, Twisted Sister Dio, and right at the bottom, one of my favourite bands of this era, the new wave of British heavy metal. So an interesting, as I said, not a genre, but a movement, but some fascinating bands. I love collecting the stuff. They're not always brilliant, but I just love collecting them. But like punk, they're really quite difficult to find, and they're very expensive. So, you've got to be careful, really. But I hope you enjoyed that anyway. And whenever you listen to this stuff, just remember, turn it up to 11. Cheers all. Thanks.